We often use video games as a form of escapism. But what happens when the game confronts you? Not your character, not your avatar. You.
I got us adjoining rooms.
Hello.
Okay. This is civil.
Before we get into this scene and how interesting it is for today's theme, a bit of context, both for newcomers and the one who've played the game quite a long time ago. Telltale's The Walking Dead is a game in which the story is tailored by the choices you make. It's about a man, Lee, taking care of a lost little girl, Clementine, during a zombie apocalypse. Together, they will go through ups and downs, joys and sorrows, will meet people and see some of them disappear, while strengthening the bond that they share, going from strangers, initially, to a father and daughter dynamic. You guessed it, the main appeal of this game is the relationship between these two characters, and how your choices will impact a little girl growing up in a world where innocence and childhood is not really allowed anymore. It will be about finding balance between preparing her for the harsh world that is awaiting her, but also keeping her humanity intact as much as possible. Towards the end of Season 1, however, two things happen. One, Clementine is being kidnapped by someone that we don't know. And two, Lee is bitten by a walker, which in the Walking Dead world means he's gonna die soon. As a last life mission of redemption, Lee will try to follow the trail of the kidnapper and try to find Clementine again and get her to safety before he dies. That's how he finds this abandoned hotel and how the scene of today starts. The setting gives the tone immediately. You just come out of a street filled with walkers, a high-stress situation with danger and alerts coming from every one of your senses. A moment when the idea of silence is pure fantasy, and all of a sudden, it's all gone. Dark room, no sound, emptiness, and the stranger finds you. There's an interesting contrast about the stranger in the fact that from the get-go the scene is very tense because of the danger that this man represents, but his tone of voice is eerily cold and monotone, giving an impression of an absence of emotion, which actually increases the pressure even more. Don't take his calmness for friendliness though. He makes you understand from the beginning that he has no compassion for you, even though you look sick and horrible. Then we have a first interaction that the stranger has with you, the player, directly. He takes away your choice. Whatever you choose to say, he will silence you before Lee says it. You are losing control of the situation, and it feels uncomfortable.
Do you know who I am?
Let me tell you who he is. He's just a guy. A normal guy. He's not some kind of supervillain with grand motives or an important figure in the story. No, none of that. But why did he kidnap Clementine then? That's because of you, says the game. Back in episode 2 in this season, Lee's group stumbled upon a well-stocked car with headlights still on, seemingly freshly abandoned. You then have a choice to make. Take stuff from the car or decide to go against the group and refuse to take part in the looting. If you decided to not take his stuff, the stranger will acknowledge it, but it won't change much about what is to come. Because this scene is not about patting you on the back. The game is telling you, sit down. I am in control now, and you will face the consequences of your choices. The directing of this scene is very simple. Shot, reverse shot, and this rear view with two men sitting face to face in a very symmetrical way, emphasizing their similarity and equality. The stranger then tells his story to Lee about the fact that he lost his family. Important to note that he lost his son prior to his car being looted, but according to him, the looting of the car made his wife and daughter leave him because they didn't trust him anymore because of it. He found his wife and daughter a couple days later on the road as walkers. The stranger serves as an image of what Lee could become should he lose Clementine, serving a bit of a similar role to Kenny in a way. We could talk about that in another video, that would be interesting, but much darker. And that mirror impression is reinforced by the directing that we talked about a bit earlier. The stranger represents a facet of fatherhood, one that is different to the ones that we've been experiencing in the game until now. A vision of losing oneself in delusion, anger, and resentment with the loss of one's purpose. Now, you might tell yourself that he's delusional, that he's full of himself, that whatever would have happened, looting or not, he would have lost his family because of his mistake, losing his son first. You might think that he's not taking responsibility in this, and fine, let's keep that in mind.
Do I look like a monster to you?
Notice that the camera is right behind Lee when he asks this, as if he was asking you directly. Why? To test you, because this man is a reflection of you. Don't believe me?
I'm not like you. You walked a little girl into a dairy full of sick people and let them get their hands on her.
I was trying to find someplace safe for her.
You let a boy get yanked out of a window and into the night so you could protect a pretty girl with a gun.
It was impossible to save him, to save them both.
You brought her to the most dangerous place in this city where she could have died.
I couldn't leave her at the house alone.
She would have been better off!
Well, there we go. It's judgment time. There are some moments in the game where tough choices have to be made, such as, for example, deciding on not to leave a woman on the road to probable death because she just murdered another member of the group. Or deciding on not to bash a big man's brain in when he just had a heart attack because if he doesn't recover from his crisis, him coming back as a walker in a closed and tight space would mean that he would physically overpower everyone in the room and kill everybody. Sometimes you also just make mistakes, such as when you can kill a man that kept you captive with a pitchfork without thinking that Clementine could be behind you and see it all. You guessed it, there are no good choices, and you do the best that you can with the time that you're being given, which is very limited, by the way. And everyone makes mistakes. That's what you want to think, right? Well, the game doesn't want that. You thought that you could move on from the hard choices that you had to make through the game and not think about it, but the game will actually pause things and force you to introspection. And no matter how you justify yourself, it has no impact. He keeps pushing you and getting angrier and angrier. And as you desperately press triangle or square or whatever button to find the best justification you have, you're behaving exactly like him. You're not taking responsibility. You might notice that there are apologetic answers possible, but you're not likely to pick them. Why? Because the game manipulates you into not picking them. And how does the game do that? Well, by having a literal psycho antagonizing you and pointing the finger directly at your ego, which is a very human reaction to have to make excuses and defend yourself when such things happen. As to why he feels so vindictive about Lee, a bit because he's nutty, for sure, but also because he sees himself in Lee and he sees his own mistakes in Lee's mistakes. That's why it infuriates him so much, and it also puts his thoughts into perspective when he says,
You're a monster. You're a murderer and a thief, and I'm gonna hurt you so bad.
After making you reflect on the pain and suffering that you've created, the game goes for the finishing blow to break you. The stranger makes a final proposition to you, taking care of Clementine in your stead, because you've been so horrible at protecting and raising her that it would be better for her to be with a clearly unstable man than with you, a dying man full of past failings. And it hurts. The game also throws shade at Lee's character here, not you, by calling him out on the fact that he missed Clem's birthday. For a second you may think that, well, this is the lesser evil of the situation. There is no one around for certain that could take care of Clem, and this guy might just be her best chance. Until you see the stranger talking to his dead wife's head in a bag. I mean, he did say our plans changed earlier, like a Gollum wannabe. And you feel horrible for thinking just 1 second of leaving Clementine with this guy. The game keeps on taunting you and breaking you at every steps, again and again. Clementine and Lee managed to get the upper hand on the stranger and kill him, one way or another, depending on your actions in a quick time event sequence. Yet another time you had to kill a man in front of a little girl. The game leaves you no rest in presenting you as a shitty role model. After that, Lee reassures Clementine as he can, before they leave this place. One last note on the stranger, his name. The stranger. He doesn't give his name, he doesn't need to, because it could be anyone, and potentially, through your choices, you've created a ton of people like him in your journey. He's the burden of your conscience that will always remain. You may ask yourself at this point, well, Fiction Freak, didn't you say that the story was tailored by our actions? Because the way you present things, it seems like it always ends up in the same place whatever I choose. Yes, but it actually serves a statement here. Both positive and negative. For the negative, it doesn't matter what you choose and what you did, Lee always ends up beaten up and dying. Which is really frustrating because all this suffering, all these choices, all this try hard didn't change the course of things for Lee. And it's a powerful experience of powerlessness as a player. But also, no matter what you did it to protect Clementine. And no matter what you chose, it worked. Thanks to you, she will live another day, and hopefully a better day. To finish today's video, I'm going to touch a word on that question. Do our choices really matter in this game and similar games? To which I answer, it's not about the story, it's about your story. And every single choices that you make affects your perception of the story, which in the end is the most important. What you experience, what you reflect upon because of that experience. So anyway, that was it for today, and I will see you soon for another great experience of some fiction.